Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Rail Visioning series here on Inland Urbanist. Today, it's finally time to talk about the backbone of rail in Southern California, and that would be LOSSAN. While obviously LOSSAN isn't in the inland region itself, any discussion of rail service in the inland region does involve interaction with LOSSAN in some way or another. In previous videos, several lines which would run at least partly on LOSSAN have been identified. The IEOC Line already exists and runs on LOSSAN from the city of Orange to Oceanside. Ditto for the 91 PV line, which uses LOSSAN from LA Union Station to Fullerton. In terms of lines that were previously proposed that would use LOSSAN, that would be the Barstow line from Burbank to LA Union Station and the I-15 line from Miramar to San Diego. But today's exercise isn't just about identifying the trains which somehow serve the inland region via LOSSAN. Rather, this is a look at a service vision for LOSSAN itself. Buckle up, because this is going to be fun. Before describing the vision, perhaps it's useful to help set the baseline of what LOSSAN is in the first place. The LOSSAN Corridor is identified as an approximately 350-mile route from San Diego to San Luis Obispo via Los Angeles in the middle. Historically, what now makes up the LOSSAN route was part of two main railroads. South of LA, Santa Fe owned the line to San Diego, while north of LA Union Station, it runs on former Southern Pacific trackage leading all the way to San Francisco. At some point, both companies ran some passenger service on their route, and there were also some attempts at commuter services at various points. However, plenty of other creators have already dwelled on those historical services pretty extensively, so I do not intend to spend too much time looking at them now. Instead, this is a vision for a future that provides the train as a competitive travel option for all of Southern California. While we're not going to dive any further into history, let's at least look at what is there now as well as what is on the books. The second busiest passenger corridor outside of the Northeast Corridor, LOSSAN currently hosts a variety of different passenger rail service. Going from north to south, the Pacific Surfliner is the only service that runs the entire 351-mile route, with a select few trains each day that make the trip all the way from San Luis Obispo to San Diego. From Goleta, Surfliner service frequencies increase with several more trains that run from there to San Diego. Ventura adds Metrolink, with that being the farthest that its logically named Ventura County line runs. At Moore Park, more Metrolink gets added, and again at Chatsworth. In Burbank, the Metrolink Antelope Valley line joins LOSSAN too for the last few miles to LA Union Station. But it's south of Union Station where LOSSAN features the most service, hosting the highest frequency of Surfliner trains as well as the Metrolink OC line and the 91 Paris Valley line through Fullerton, where the latter splits off to Riverside and Paris, while Surfliner and OC line continued south, joined by the Metrolink IEOC line in Orange. While both Metrolink lines technically stretch to Oceanside, many of their trains end at Laguna Niguel. In Oceanside, the commuter regional rail operator switches from Metrolink to Coaster to join Surfliner for the journey to downtown San Diego. Sprinter also makes a small cameo at Oceanside, but splits off to Escondido after only a few blocks. The current plans in place are not earth-shattering, but would provide some meaningful upgrades to the service option. Those include increasing daily Surfliner departures to 16 for the segment from Union Station to San Diego, plans to implement commuter service at Santa Barbara, and potential increases to Coaster at some point in the future when they get the money to run more trains. But the real star of the show is the proposed LinkUS project, which will provide run-through capabilities at LA Union Station. Currently, Union Station is a stub-end station, with all trains to all destinations having to pass through the maze of tracks at the throat to both enter and leave the station. LinkUS will end that by providing a bridge over the US 101 freeway, then ramp down to join the tracks on the riverbank, enabling trains to pass through the station in one trip versus having to back in or out as they do at present. The question is what that would do for service patterns, and that is where we really want to pick up the exercise today. Except for the IEOC line, every Metrolink line currently ends or begins at Union Station. Since some lines run north of the station and some run south, a popular idea is to just combine lines from north and south and run them as one line. However, looking at all the Metrolink lines as they exist, it is unclear how exactly that would really work. Although it seems like a number of lines approach from the south, only the OC line and 91 Paris Valley line would actually be able to use the run-through approach from the south over the new bridge, as the Riverside line currently comes up the east side of the LA River and thus uses the same bridge as the San Bernardino line does. If the Riverside line is rerouted as proposed in the Part 1 Rail Vision video to use the Alhambra sub, it would use the adjacent bridge, but the end result is the same. It's still coming in on the north side. That means 4 routes would go in the north side, 2 from the south. In earlier iterations of the LinkUS concept, it was suggested having an actual loop track that would allow trains to turn north along the west side of the LA River, as well as go south, which would in theory allow the routes from the north to be looped onto either the Riverside or San Bernardino lines. The problem with that is that it would introduce a flat junction at the throat, which in turn would negate a lot of the potential benefits of LinkUS, and as I now understand it, the loop track has been value engineered out anyway. That leaves a status quo of 4 routes from the north side, 2 from the south. As noted a moment ago, LinkUS has been the victim of a bit of value engineering. Not only has the loop track been cut out, but the platforms have also been shortened, and the number of run-through tracks have also been reduced. I believe a major part of that has been the highly fractured nature of the situation, leading to a lack of a really clear vision of what the LinkUS provide. So perhaps it is now a time to take a detour through the various agencies in the mix here. Starting out with Union Station itself, it is owned by LA Metro and serves as a downtown terminal station for Metrolink, Amtrak long-distance trains, and Surfliner, all separate agencies from LA Metro. Metrolink is a JPA comprised of the transportation commissions of LA, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ventura counties, while Surfliner is managed by the LOSSAN JPA, which is another entity comprised of the transportation commissions and transportation agencies along or using the LOSSAN Corridor, which are LA Metro, OCTA, RCTC, San Diego, MTS, and the North Coast Transit District, or NCTD, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura. Though it is a legally separate entity, LOSSAN JPA staff come out of OCTA. Note that every single agency mentioned that is a member of LOSSAN or Metrolink JPAs are themselves also all JPAs. Unsurprisingly, in recent years there have been calls for governance reform because what a mess. Ownership of the LOSSAN Corridor is similarly convoluted. Public ownership consists of LA Metro from the county line with Ventura to Union Station. Ventura County owns from the county line with LA West to Moore Park. OCTA owns from Fullerton to San Diego County line on the south. NCTD owns from Orange County line to San Diego. In the Metrolink territory, this is commonly presented as Metrolink ownership, but it's not actually owned by the Metrolink itself. Meanwhile, BNSF owns a portion from CP Soto, or basically the mouth of the Alameda Corridor, down to Fullerton. And Union Pacific owns from Moore Park all the way to SLO and beyond. With so many hands in the cookie jar, it is hard to know what is going on, both as an advocate and apparently also for the agents. Metrolink has its vaunted SCORE program, which would deliver consistent 30 or 15-minute headways on several of the lines which touch LOSSAN. The LOSSAN JPA has a separate plans for improving Surfliner operations, including some track additions to enable more service to or from Goleta. SANDAG has funded double tracking of NCTD tracks in San Diego County for years now, and when complete would provide a fully double track corridor, basically from county line to downtown San Diego. LA Metro has separate double tracking projects on the books, though those are on hold indefinitely and some are being turned over to Metrolink to manage and deliver. Worse yet, the SCORE projects are themselves a mishmash of delivery partners, with Metrolink leading on some and others being led or at least being strongly influenced by the constituent agencies, producing additional delays in the process. Looking at you, OCTA and RCTC. That means we have no good answer about when we really can expect what, especially since SCORE has never been fully funded in the first place. There is a broad expectation or hope of being able to use the 2028 LA Olympics as a soft launch of the transition to full regional rail operations of system-wide half-hourly service, with some lines having a 15-minute headways if they are closer to LA Union Station. Anyway, to further add to all the confusion, the California High-Speed Rail Authority is a major player in all this too, given that it is slated to use the LOSSAN Corridor from Burbank to LA Union Station and on down to Anaheim, with environmental clearance for the former being certified last year and the latter expected this year. With all that out of the way, let's start picking it apart and present the service vision that the corridor needs to be able to deliver a truly world-class travel experience. Let's start out with the obvious parts first. Once LinkUS is complete, some lines can be combined. Now, LA Metro has studied what they call a tripper service, which would be a combination of parts of the Ventura County line and OC line. However, I believe that the best candidate for combination are actually the AV line and the OC line. This could be done once the LinkUS is open, and then in the longer term, I believe it should be taken one step further and also combined with Coaster for a new service that would be named Surflocal and run all the way to San Diego and perhaps even all the way to the border, as has been proposed as an extension of Surfliner. At the same time, it shouldn't run the entire length of the existing AV line, but rather only from the Vista Canyon station, which is where some of the AV line trains already end, as the arrival of high-speed rail to SoCal via Palmdale will likely absorb most of the ridership off the hill, as it will easily be the better part of an hour faster than the AV line is for the same trip. What happens with the route beyond that will be covered in a moment. This should run at a peak frequency of at least 10-minute headways, if better, and 15 minutes off-peak. The next line to discuss is the Ventura County line, or perhaps it would be better to refer to it by a name which reflects where the terminus should be. In that case, we should call it the Santa Barbara County line. Leave a comment below if you have a better name idea. As mentioned above, there's already a plan in the works to run a commuter service over to Goleta from Oxnard. However, this plan is very much a mere tease. We don't just need commuter service, we need regular service. The Santa Barbara County Line should have 20-minute peak headaways running from Union Station all the way to Goleta, and maybe even 10-minute headaways to Chatsworth. Doing so would massively improve travel options through the San Fernando Valley, Ventura County, and into Santa Barbara. Now we can discuss what happens with the rest of the Antelope Valley Line, and here we also get our first new alignment proposal. At present, the AV line runs from Union Station to Lancaster. However, I believe that in the future it should be rerouted to Goleta via the old Santa Paula branch. This would provide a new connectivity option in the State Route 126 corridor, as well as another connection for the coastal communities to reach high-speed rail to NorCal, Vegas, or elsewhere in the high desert via transfers in Palmdale. Similarly, the north end of the Antelope Valley Line should be extended from the current terminus of Lancaster up to at least California City, adding stops in places like Rosamond and Mojave along the way. This too should have a peak frequency of 20 minutes, which would mean that when combined with the Santa Barbara County Line, there would be a train as often as every 10 minutes from Ventura to Goleta. Going a little bit out of order now, next up is a strong contender for the Gateway Cities line name, for the proposal for the Metrolink service to Long Beach via the Union Pacific San Pedro subdivision. This has not been extremely well defined yet in the planning process, but this could be an opportunity for through-running Santa Barbara County Line trains. The big question is where it goes once it gets to Long Beach, as the tracks would be using curves to the west to reach the ports about 5 miles north of downtown Long Beach. Thus, it would really have no good options on that end. Some of the ideas floating around include putting it on a viaduct down the LA River to the vicinity of downtown Long Beach, then bringing it back in somehow. However, a bit of a shortcoming with that route is that it does not serve other big destinations, namely the Long Beach Airport or Cal State Long Beach. At the same time, there's not an extremely obvious way to reach those destinations either without heroics, especially if the goal is to then still serve downtown Long Beach. Whether that is worth the cost could certainly be up for debate. However, this route would also be partly shared with the Southeast Gateway Line, so it is worth pointing out that regardless of the endpoint, it would be good if the recently awarded contract for moving the existing UP tracks in that corridor do so in a manner which is not prohibitive to further use for electrified passenger service along that route. Moving along now, we come to the IEOC line. As alluded to in the Part 1 video, this should be truncated to the San Clemente Pier Station, or maybe even just regular San Clemente if the rest of the line keeps joining the ocean. And people looking to travel to Oceanside or beyond would transfer at one of the stations before the line splits from the main LOSSAN Corridor. Wait, the line splits? While not the situation at present, it is becoming more clear and evident that a tunnel will be needed to bypass a segment of the corridor which runs on the coast through San Clemente and keeps leaving us to join the ocean. While work on such a tunnel is not really progressing yet in any meaningful manner, trying to run IEOC lines through it will use up capacity that could go to a line that provides a more valuable service in the LOSSAN Corridor itself, so I'm electing to just end IEOC line at San Clemente. Plus, that maintains the direct connectivity to the beaches, though that will not be the only way to reach beaches, as they are still also reachable in San Diego, Oceanside, Santa Barbara, etc. The other existing line that uses LOSSAN for a bit is the 91 Parrish Valley Line. Although it also runs from the south side of Union Station, I don't believe that it should be combined with a line from the north. Instead, it can remain on its present route without combination, though obviously with the extension to San Jacinto, as has been planned for a while now, including of course a Placencia stop. As discussed in the Part 1 video, it too should get 20-minute peak frequencies, which would provide 10-minute headways from Corona to Riverside downtown when combined with IEOC line, and it will also fill gaps on LOSSAN itself from Union Station to Fullerton to provide total headways trending in the direction of 5 minutes across all services. The next line to discuss is a proposal for a new route that could be conceived as being similar to the Dairy Dasher brought up in Part 2, in that it functions as a sort of connector. I previously called this the Gateway Line, but I've now landed on the name Whittier Line since it mostly serves the cities around the Whittier area when it's not on LOSSAN, and that name itself better fits on the other recipient mentioned above, though that could also just be seen as an extension of Santa Barbara Line. As envisioned, it would start from Union Station and operate over the LOSSAN Corridor, including making the proposed Pico Rivera stop, then continue to the Los Nietos area where via flyover it would access the existing Brea Chemical Industrial Lead with several stops along the way into La Habra, where it then meets the Fullerton Industrial Lead, which it would use to return to the LOSSAN Corridor, then making the stops at Fullerton and Placencia before it would use another flyover to access the Olive Subdivision, where it would make all the same stops as IEOC line, including a terminus at San Clemente. This too would be good probably at 20-minute frequency. Saving perhaps the best for last, we come to what is probably the most controversial concept of all: eliminate Surfliner. So let me explain. When high-speed rail arrives in Southern California, most of the trains will end at Union Station, but the current proposal is that 2 trains an hour will continue on to Anaheim. However, the plan for high-speed rail south of Union Station is predicated on basically all passenger service in in the corridor sharing 2 tracks through Fullerton, which is perhaps the most congested portion of the entire LOSSAN corridor, given that it's the only connection for BNSF to reach the port, and they run dozens of trains a day. That means a high-speed rail will be just another train in that corridor soaking up slots. It is worth noting that other route options have been considered for high-speed rail south of Union Station that wouldn't use the LOSSAN corridor, such as using Union Pacific tracks or I-5. However, they've been discarded due to potential costs. Nevertheless, I do believe that those plans should also be dusted off and advanced to a shovel-ready state, because it is likely that they will become necessary in the future as express bypass of the LA to Fullerton segment. Anyway, if high-speed rail is already going to be using the slots, it seems reasonable to task it with replacing Surfliner in the corridor. But I can see the furrowed brows now. How would that work? In truth, this is not really as wild an idea as it might appear. People have suggested simply upgrading LOSSAN as the path for getting high-speed rail to San Diego, and early studies on the high-speed rail concept did consider the LOSSAN corridor. Ultimately, the official route as included in Prop 1A is via the inland region, but realistically speaking, the most important part of the inland route is that it would allow for the I-15 line proposed in the Part 2 video, and it would allow for through running Brightline West to San Diego. It's less important that the actual LA to San Diego high-speed trains also go that way. Instead, just extend them down LOSSAN, making all the stops that Surfliner currently makes. That would solve 2 problems, that of trying to slot high-speed rail around all the other trains, and it would also increase frequency over what Surfliner is currently providing or indeed even has planned. While LOSSAN corridor trackers will never be able to allow high-speed trains to go as fast as the segments in the Central Valley, which are being designed for 220 mile per hour operations, it should be possible to get some segments of LOSSAN up to at least 110 miles per hour, and it's likely possible to get some areas to 125 or above, though whether it makes sense to do that high of speed on a mixed system can certainly be up for debate. Nevertheless, that should enable the ability to cut at least an hour off the current Surfliner travel time, and it could probably be brought down to the 90 or 100 minute range. Note that these sort of speed upgrades are also why combining the Antelope Valley Line, the OC Line, and the coaster can work so well, because even with additional stops, we should be able to keep that trip below 2.5 hours. On the other end of the Surfliner route, only a handful of Surfliner trains run north of Union Station in the first place, and even fewer run all the way to San Luis Obispo. Thus, to replace Surfliner north of Union Station, the idea would be that the LA to San Francisco, or NorCal more broadly, service, such as Coast Daylight, could fill that gap. The revamping of the Ventura County line to the Santa Barbara County line would add far more service through Goleta than is lost by nixing Surfliner, and even with a schedule of every several hours between trains, a Coast Daylight, or whatever we want to call it, would almost certainly provide more service beyond Goleta than Surfliner currently does. Plus, the rerouted Antelope Valley line will mean that there would be as frequent as 10-minute headways from Ventura to Goleta across both lines making that trip. Although there would no longer be direct trips from San Diego to places on LOSSAN north of Burbank downtown, the dramatic increase in all services would more than compensate for that loss, as it would be much easier to reach those destinations with a simple transfer. For those keeping score at home, that means that there would be several portions of LOSSAN which could have a train perhaps as frequently as every 5 minutes across all the different service ideas being presented here. Between Union Station and Pico Rivera, and then again at Fullerton, there would be a Surflocal every 10 minutes and a 91 Paris Valley or Whittier Line train 5 minutes later. While between Orange and Laguna Niguel, or maybe San Juan Capistrano, depending on where the tunnel really starts, there would again be a Surflocal every 10 minutes, then an alternating IEOC Line train or Whittier Line train 5 minutes later. All of that would be overlaid with high-speed rail every 30 minutes for the stops down to San Diego. North of Union Station, there would be a Surflocal or Santa Barbara County Line train every 5 minutes through Burbank downtown, on top of whatever frequency is running for high-speed rail, Brightline West, and Barstow Line as proposed in the IE New Services video, though those trains would probably only stop at Burbank Airport after leaving Union Station. It should go without saying that this would present a monumental shift in travel options in the entire LOSSAN corridor. Several portions would have trains so frequently that there would be scarcely a need for a traveler to consult a schedule before showing up at a station. Notably, this is a far more ambitious plan than the state rail plan itself, but we absolutely should not see it as unattainable, even within the time frame of the state rail plan, which is through 2050. And while yes, it would not be free to accomplish, nearly every single agency up and down the LOSSAN corridor collectively continue to dump billions of dollars into widening freeways and major arterials which approximate the corridor, money which would handily cover the cost of implementing the vision presented here, even if only a fraction of it were shifted over. Anyway, that will just about wrap it up for this next installment of the Rail Vision series. If you appreciated this and want to see more, feel free to hit the subscribe button so you know when the next video arrives. And if you want to support the channel, feel free to head over to Patreon, where you can join and become a member. Until next time, safe travels.